people that have hardly been able to make it through the economic crisis, let alone the pandemic. In a literally a blink of an eye, everything came down to the ground. And that is more devastating than all of the combined years of civil war that we had to go through, because it literally took an instant.
I'm Dani Valent, and this is Dirty Linen, the podcast that takes the issues the hospitality industry finds hard to air in public and shakes them all about. This fortnight on Dirty Linen, we are travelling all around the world, which I'm really enjoying because I'm very stuck here in Melbourne. I think we're here in stage 4, I'm in lockdown. It's easy to feel like we've got it tough, but honestly, compared to people like Jade George, who we're going to be talking to today, who is in Beirut in Lebanon, things actually seem pretty okay here in Melbourne. Jade is a publisher. She launched the Carton, a publication about Middle Eastern food culture 8 years ago or so, and she's a partner in Kalei Coffee, which was founded by Dalia Jaffal. And Kalei Coffee has 2 locations in Beirut. One of them was very badly damaged in the awful explosion of the night of August, or the day of August 4, I believe it was. I think it was the evening here. Anyway, Jade, hello, and thank you so much for taking time to talk to us all the way over here in Australia today.
Hi, Dani. Thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
It's difficult to say. It's really ups and downs these days.
There's I'm very far from an expert on Lebanon. I'm a reader of the news, but it's, even if you just, I suppose, summarize the situation in Lebanon, it feels like a place where there's always so much happening. There's so much political upheaval, cultural upheaval. And even if we look at what's happened in Lebanon in the last 6 months, it feels like enough for a century of news and history and things for people to deal with. Can you take a little bit of time and put your situation in some kind of context for us?
Yes, it's important to start by giving the rest of the world some context on Lebanon today, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. For the sake of the gravity of what we're in right now, I'm going to fast forward through the part about the 15 years of Lebanese civil war that started in 1975. Last October, forest fires ignited in the Lebanese mountains, something you're familiar with. It was very badly handled by the government. You find out things like the existence of 2 helicopters that are meant to be allocated for these kinds of disasters that were not even maintained and therefore not functional at all. I'll spare your audience a lesson in geography. We are ruled by a corrupt political class and have succumbed to foreign interference and meddling since the formation of the country that is known as Lebanon today. An inevitable economic collapse started to take tangible shape due to a system of debt concocted after the Civil War that's connected to our sole reliance on funds like the IMF, and also due to sanctions that have choked the country's economy. Not to forget sanctions imposed on Syria, which directly crushes Lebanon's economy because we heavily rely on their industry, among other sectors. We had a run on the banks, which led to a major currency devaluation by around 80%. People took to the streets. The toying with political agendas escalated very fast. And just like the rest of the world, we were hit by a global pandemic, leading up to the events of August 4, an occurrence that we're all going to suffer the repercussions of forever, I would say. For a bit of perspective, to anyone who's never visited Lebanon or doesn't know much about it, what happened on August 4th is not normal for a country like Lebanon, whatever biased propaganda media tells you. It's essential for the world to understand that events like the Beirut blast is not a default way of living in Beirut. We go about our lives as anyone does in any quote-unquote functional city in the world. We grab our laptops, sit at coffee shops for hours, finish our deadlines, head out for a drink with friends any day of the week, among other things, of course. we've got a lot of foreigners that choose to live in the country, and many tourists at any given time of the year that flock over to explore our food and wine culture, hike the Lebanon Mountain Trail, explore the archaeology, experience the nightlife of Beirut that everybody talks about. The Beirut blast took place in what is, to many people, the heart of the city, where many of us live, work, socialize at any given time of the day or night. It is where some of Beirut's most prominent art galleries, design studios, bookshops, etc., have been running for many years. As I said, it's going to be ups and downs for all of us. The only way to have coped in the last couple of weeks, it's been 2 weeks now, is to kind of like help out whoever was worse off than you. And I think it's just a coping mechanism. But that's really a nutshell of what's been going on.
Oh, it's so much. I think it's so important, Jade, that you make the point that this isn't something that people there know how to deal with. I think when a lot of people would know that Lebanon has been marked by civil war and unrest, but that doesn't mean that you can take anything that's thrown at you, or that something can be just part of the run of other difficult things that comes to confront people. What was it like? Where were you when the blast happened?
I was at Kalei in the location in Mkhael, which means Saint Michael in Arabic. It's that region that I just mentioned. Both me and Dalia were in the shop amongst with the staff that were on shift around that time, along with a lot of our regulars. We actually had a full house. I think people were really sick of being locked down, and we were following whatever measures for COVID that we needed to follow in those couple of weeks of reopening, because we've been going through, like closure and then reopening and some measures of how to reopen. And it was truly a full house that day. It was heavy. It was a heavy load that day.
And did you know that there was a fire down at the port that preceded the explosion? Was that something that was sort of known throughout the city, or was it just the first thing you knew about it was that there was a blast?
Not at all. Actually, I was having a conversation about Chardonnay with somebody, and then we started hearing an aircraft, to be honest, which is also a big thing that people are debating, whether they heard some kind of aircraft flying over seconds before the first explosion. And the second we heard that, me and Dalia are familiar with it, having lived through different kinds of attacks in the country. And we walked over to each other and kind of like exchanged looks like, no, come on, this is not happening. And, like being the pilot, like on the cruise, we had to just like go out to inspect to make sure no one's in danger. So we started walking out of the gate of the shop through the garden, and that's when we heard the first explosion. We kind of like were startled, and we looked up and we started to see smoke very close to Kalei. Like everybody we talked to after the blast told us that they thought that they were personally being attacked. It was so immense that everyone thought that they were particularly targeted.
Wow.
And the first thought, like in that split second, was what is being targeted here? There's nothing here, like we actually had a bit of like splits of seconds to think about, to actually like analyze. And before we knew it, the big, what is known as the mushroom blast now went off, and it was like a full blackout for a few seconds, like before you like look, because we kind of like projectiled, and before we opened our eyes to like just basically check that our limbs are still there, and like just ran to the closest people to us, just looked at everybody, whoever was wounded, we tried to make sure got to a hospital. And sadly, because we thought it was like an attack, and we were almost certain of it. we were waiting for the next one. So it took us up to like 45 minutes to find out that there was actually an explosion at the port, because literally people thought in different regions of the city, if not the country, thought that the explosion was just next to them.
Oh, that's just so shocking. Was there phone coverage? Like, was you able to get any information, or was it just a complete mystery and yeah, just a horror show?
I think because everybody was kind of running to secure the people around them. The last thing you want to do is to pick up your phone, right? So the first thing you do is, mom and dad, partner, I'm okay, I'm alive. Then you just like toss your phone and you start running to the first person in need. I mean, it's crazy how everybody kind of described their experience almost identical to the next person. And like when I said it from my perspective, I realized it wasn't just my perspective. Everybody was feeling the same thing. But as soon as everybody sorted themselves out and walked out in the street, it was literally, it was like the apocalypse in the city. We've never, ever seen the city, and everybody that's lived anything, the Civil War, any kind of war, described it as a one of a kind happening. It was literally like, you're like out of a movie. You couldn't understand. Your mind couldn't fathom what you were seeing. And we're still, dealing with these images till today. So as soon as the first person picked up a phone, it was all over every news. Local news as well. It was probably closest to reality. And we realized that the explosion actually happened only at the port. And slowly we started to gather, what happened. Sadly, because of the first explosion, a lot of people rushed to their windows or balconies to check out what was going on. Anybody that's gone through, that's got some kind of traumas from previous wars was like quick to kind of hide, thinking something else was going to happen. But sadly, that's not what the majority of the population would do. And because of how huge the blast was, people even outside the city or the proximity of the city center got badly harmed because of whatever broke in their house. So mostly a lot of glass, like the sound of glass breaking will never be the same again, I think, for anyone that experienced this. And people got harmed from, like projectile flying over because of how strong the blast was and just hitting the wrong thing. And in parallel, there were so many stories of how miraculously the rest of us who made it, how close we were to not making it.
Is that how you felt personally?
Absolutely. I could have been 2 centimeters back or front, or but I wasn't. And just shows you that it's just all unfathomable, really. Just how fragile life is.
Tell me about Kalei Coffee and this kind of space that you'd created.
I've definitely helped create Kalei. Kalei was founded, like you said, by Dalia Jaffal, and her vision was so honest and humble and really spot on for what Beirut kind of always needed. And in 2015, she really saw this place as a place, kind of like a third space for people in Lebanon, because we have a huge population of freelancers, designers, artists that don't necessarily have like a full-time job. And I don't need to explain it to you. Obviously, a lot of people need a space to kind of work and have a good cup of coffee. And in parallel, there's just because we are a people that are extremely sociable. We like to be out out with friends. That's like the reason for us to consume even. This is why also the global pandemic affected us a lot, because we're not a country that really runs on, home deliveries and online shopping. We're very much about like, going out and meeting people and picking up our own food, and it's all really social. And in 2016, the first Kalei coffee roastery was launched in Mkhael in the Ashafia region. It's basically a coffee roastery. Dalia sources some of the most ethically sourced and the best beans, honestly, that I have sampled anywhere in the world. And she roasts them on site along with her team of roasters. It happens to be like kind of like an old Lebanese house with a garden wrapped around the front yard. The reason for choosing this place for her was because we have a huge lack for public spaces in the city. And so people from all walks of life just come to Kalei for different reasons, to have good coffee, and some not even to have a cup of coffee, just like kind of to be in this place. People have built a very, very solid relationship with the team, for every single person on the team, really. And, that the support we've been getting in the last 2 weeks is proof of the impact that this place has had on people, even people that have visited Beirut just once in their life.
Well, the way that I heard about Kalei was through Tom Serafian and Joseph Aboud at Bar Saracen in Melbourne, and through a hummus fundraiser where they sold hummus to contribute to your rebuilding campaign, or a campaign you're donating funds to NGOs in Beirut. Is that right?
We're actually we just started a fund. We were really tossing. I mean, in the early days of when everything happened, we were very aware that we are not able to rebuild it ourselves. Like, that was out of the question, and we really tossed. I mean, we're not very great at asking people for money. We're to us, everything needs to be justifiable. We don't like to ride the boat whenever an opportunity raises itself. But at the end of the day, we have a team of over 25 employees that have invested themselves into our company, and that we've personally invested into emotionally as well. And we had this huge responsibility. It wasn't about the place, nor us as the people who were involved in the place from the get-go. And after a few days of discussing it, we decided to just like put it out there. We brought someone to assess the damages, and we just put it out there, not thinking anything of it, or not making much of it. And honestly, the support is really incredible. We've seen great support from abroad, whether it be the diaspora or otherwise. It might have toppled over any other kind of help towards the Lebanese people. Joe Aboud of Bar Saracen is an old friend of mine, and he's been an avid reader of the Carton and really a great supporter. And I've met Tom more recently. He actually came to Beirut before opening Bar Saracen on his kind of like expedition to explore food from the region. And he's a really an honest and really understands how important food culture is. And we had huge smiles on our faces, like faces that haven't smiled in a while, when we saw like what they came up with, because we're very aware of what Melbourne has been going through, both economically, specifically on the food and beverage front in the last few years, and then the pandemic hitting it as well. And maybe they personally didn't have the means to support, but they kind of creatively found a way to support. They've raised what I believe is 20,000 Australian dollars for the Lebanese Red Cross, and they're like double whammy with auctioning a plate of hummus which ended up selling at like 600 Australian dollars, which we just had to laugh about. But they're awesome boys.
Well, they are amazing. And I remember when Joe first showed me the carton, I think it was, one of the early issues, and he held it like I don't know, a talisman or a prize or a promise. It was to have, I guess, something contemporary that was speaking to about the huge heart and history of Middle Eastern cuisine means so much to the diaspora as well as to people who are there living it, of course. So I think it's definitely been a really important publication for people I'm sure, certainly in Melbourne, I'm sure in many other places around the world. And when I asked Tom what I should chat to you about, he said Jade is an absolute legend, and he spoke incredibly highly of the way that you showed him around town and to the rest bakeries, the wineries, and just giving him a bit of a primer on Lebanese culture.
We've had some like he was really big on offal, Tom, when he was here. Anything that was like from the insides of an animal, he was up for having. I always had like a long introduction of, "Are you sure you want to have this?" And he was always the first to jump, and he's really curious about anything and everything, and he really doesn't do anything, half-assed. So. I mean, really, food culture is, people always ask me, the last 12 years of my career have been in food culture, and politics and food, I don't need to be, I won't be the first to state this, are one and the same. They're intertwined, and food and culture, food and sociopolitics, food and anthropology. And, you being food journalists, I think can attest to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, food intersects brilliantly, beautifully, troublingly with every aspect of humanity. And I guess to your list, I would also add, to the environment. It's just, food is such a great way of connecting with people because it intersects with every single aspect of life. And it's endlessly rich, and it's endlessly offers opportunity for connection and for learning. And I learn many things every day because I continue to be fascinated by food and continue to learn, just to continue to realize how ignorant I am and how much more there is to know. And I still haven't been to Lebanon, so that is still ahead of me. And anything that Tom ate, I promise that I'll eat as well.
Lebanon. I mean, we are from this place. We are a group of people who have. We're not a group of people that have immigrated to a land from all parts of the world. This place is ours, and we're here to stay, and we're here to welcome everybody that has any curiosity about discovering this place.
There was something that was written on the Carton and also the Kalei Coffee Instagram, your first post after the explosion, and it was, "The thought of rebuilding is definitely not our first instinct because we reject the idea that our people should continue to accept to be called resilient at the price of starting over and over again this way." What does that mean?
Resilience, more than ever, is proving to be a very dangerous word. Because if you just, plaster that word on anyone that you just like keep knocking down and asking them to stand up again, you're just raising the bar of what they will and will not accept. And you're assuming that they will accept anything at any cost. And, quote unquote, the Lebanese people will figure it out and rise again. It doesn't matter what the cost is. And it's the first thing I said in our conversation is, this is not something that we're used to doing. This is not something that we concern ourselves with on a daily basis. We're just like anybody who just goes to pick a vase for their table at their home from an expensive place or non-expensive place, and just go about our lives just like anybody. And resilience because it kind of surfaced on the first few days of the Beirut blast, we really felt like that it needed to be questioned, because, like I said, even if we do rise again, surely we're not going to just give up our country. Like I said, we are from this place. We can't just up and go anywhere else. Even if another door opens up to us, this is where we're from, and this is home essentially. But that doesn't mean that we will accept, to be applauded for being knocked out and to stand up again to rebuild, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, is it like you want to be allowed to break as well and to be devastated and to not bounce back? Is it something like that?
Yeah, but also it's also a way of saying no to these things happening to us. There's absolutely no human reason for this to happen to people from any part of the world. And unfortunately, like I said, in Western media, Lebanon's portrayed as like a red flag war zone, when it really isn't. And it's very important to contextually understand where we are in our geopolitics and what's been happening for the last few decades, even from World War II. I would go that far back to understand why the Lebanese people endure this, or why the Lebanese people have had to endure this. And I think there is absolutely no reason for people from any part of the world to accept something like this happening to them. And I think it's also important for the rest of the world to kind of open their eyes and minds to things beyond what is, being portrayed in immediate media or mass media.
What would you like people to do? To read more deeply, or to one of the reasons the reason really that I wanted to talk to you was as to learn more and for people to listen and to learn and to understand. And I think it's so easy to put big disasters and events that happen on the other side of the world into the bucket of, things that happen to other people. And I think it's really important for Australians, everybody, but let me talk about Australians who sometimes, some people turn other people into something else, something that it couldn't happen to us. It's not me. It's nothing to do with me. And I think it's really important to, just stand together in our humanity and to realize that, no, this isn't okay. It's not okay for Lebanese. It's not okay for anybody to go through what you're going through.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example to kind of, put things in context. When this happened and people from around the world rushed to even so much as feel with us what we were going through, they were quick to refer to the Notre Dame in Paris, the fire that happened. And, it just like to give you a bit of context that what happened in Beirut in this particular blast, leaving every other tragedy that's happened to us on the side, is not a building or a monument or a historical church burning down. I think it's very important to understand that there's always two sides to every story. And media specifically, and coming from background in media, when in a given era is controlled by someone versus another, so the story of one side gets through faster or in a way more embellished way than another, I think every human being should look at the other side of the coin, even if it were just out of curiosity.
So explain why the Notre Dame thing is so different to what you've experienced, what you're going through.
I mean, putting aside the human losses, the loss of culture that is beyond just one building, but multiple collection of heritage sites, art, young design studios that have been really struggling in the economic crisis to make it for the last 10, 12, 15, 20 years. People who have lost people that have lost their homes, people that are literally in their 70s and 80s that have endured everything that this region has sadly had to endure, and just losing it. In literally in an instant, you before the Beirut blast, I told you I was literally discussing genres of wine, and I had to close my eyes and open my eyes and find my city in rubbles. I find my people struggling for their lives, losing their loved ones. Historical buildings that have gone through a lot to be able to sustain or rebuild or survive. People that have hardly been able to make it through the economic crisis, let alone the pandemic. In a literally a blink of an eye, everything came down to the ground, and that is more devastating than all of the combined years of civil war that we had to go through, because it literally took an instant.
Well, there's so much that I want to unpack in what you've said. I think one thing is, when I think about Notre Dame, I think that it's a contained, tragedy. It's a contained accident, and you just know that it's going to get fixed. You know that concerned people and the machinery of government it'll get sorted out. And I think what's happened with the Beirut blast, I don't think there's a feeling after it of a clear path forward. I mean, in the days after the blast, the government resigned. It's not getting, it's not necessarily getting cleaned up. Things are still messy, and it doesn't seem like there's an obvious way to tidy things up and move forward. And as you say, there's still that we're in a pandemic, and it shows how massive everything else is, that the pandemic barely even sneaks into this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're about to embark on a 2-week lockdown as of this Friday. We're not sure if it's because, the hospitals got a really big hit from the blast, and we were amongst the first countries to actually take proper measures towards everything related to the pandemic, because our hospitals were not equipped for an outbreak. Although Lebanon is known to be a country that's big on medical tourism in the region, so not to say that our hospitals aren't good hospitals or that our doctors aren't good doctors, but we weren't prepared for a pandemic like that, and we went into 2-month lockdown, and it was really, really contained. And then the upsurge started after the blast, because obviously people kind of were helping each other and intermingled, and there was like kind of we've peaked a little bit. We're still at 400 or 500 a day, which is a lot in terms of what Lebanon's had to go through with COVID, but not compared to other countries. But so we're getting into 2-week for now lockdown as of this Friday. It could also be for security reasons, but yeah, you mentioned the government resigning. That's really, it's not really a reflection of anything, because we've had a series of resignations. And like I said, we have a very corrupt government that is a product of many, many things, mostly foreign interventions. And I think it's a major time for change. I'm not talking about Lebanon only. I'm talking about globally. It's, for me at least, it is clear that we are in a post-globalization, post-capitalism era. And you know what? We've seen what the last half a decade has left us with on a humanitarian, on an environmental and social front, to say the least. I would say it is unarguably a time for drastic change.
Can you see that playing out in a positive way?
I mean, if you look at the world in the last few years, I would say, I'm willing to take my chances.
That's great. I'm really, really heartened to hear you say that. Jade, you spoke about Kalei as a third place that that Dalia and yourself have created. It's so important in a time of crisis that people have those third spaces, even among destruction, and even in when there's lockdowns of various types and strengths. Where do you see the place of your third place now, and the project of reclaiming it and sharing it with your community?
One of the strangest things we witnessed the day after August 4th is we had one of our staff members take the cell phone of the place back home with him, and he just called us up to tell us, guys, people are calling asking if we're open, like wanting to come by, and others knowing that we got a big hit, asking if they can come by and help remove the rubble and clean up. And I think we're not ready to let go of at least what this place represents. With the help of everybody that's aided in the last 2 weeks through this fund that we finally decided to just put out there, we are going to be able to at least financially afford to do so. Even the people that were in Kalei that day, the first thing we all wanted to do right after the blast is to just go back to that place to make sure, to be very, very sure that we are not traumatized from the place, that the trauma does not come from being in that place, that the trauma is a citywide trauma. And regardless of where you were, this was going to happen to you. And it was like really heart opening to see how a lot of the people that were there that day just came by, although the place has been closed, to just stand outside the gate to say, you know what? I'm making peace with that moment and that place, but I'm not willing to make peace with why this happened, who caused it, and like the everything that was lost in the aftermath of the explosion.
That is so powerful. And you said earlier that when the blast was occurring, that everybody felt like it was directed at them, and then to be able to step back from that and to recreate it as a shared experience across a whole city is really, it's just a very powerful thing to think about. It feels very, very human. Wow. Jade, I don't know what to say. I haven't been. Yeah. Is there anything that you want to say? It's just.
I know I think it's probably your heaviest episode, huh?
Well, I mean, there's stuff happening all around the world, but I think the crush of events and the really complex context of the situation in Lebanon, and the fact that you're in the midst of so many things. And I have to say that you're so articulate about it. And I take my hat off to you. I would put on a hat just to take it off to you.
I would say, I just have to say, I'm one amongst many. I'm one amongst maybe a million. So I don't want to take a credit for the whole thing. I think the whole Lebanese people deserve credit for even like just going back down on the street the next morning to clean and to help, which should have been a government thing to do, but actually the people cleaned everything, and they started their own initiatives outside of everything outside of NGOs or organized efforts. And they really deserve a hat off.
Yeah, well, yeah, to everybody there, all the hats, all the hats off, all the hummus, all the everything. Jade, tell me when I come to Beirut, what are you going to take me to eat? What am I going to enjoy?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe, I mean, I know that Tom makes a kick-ass hummus, so I don't think that will be the thing I will take you to try. But for sure, since you're up for offal, that's something that you're going to experience. We're going to explore the Armenian neighborhoods, which are a prominent part of the Lebanese culture and food culture as well. And you're definitely going to come and have a cup of coffee at Kalei once we rebuild it.
Definitely. I can't wait. Thank you so much for just spilling some energy in our direction. I really, really appreciate it. I really honour your story, and I'm really grateful to you for teaching us more about your experience. We'll put the link to your fundraiser with the episode, and yeah, I just wish you all the best. Let's stay in touch, and let's hear more about the journey as it continues. But thanks so much, Jade.
Thank you, and my love to the people of Australia. I hope everybody gets through this global pandemic and is not forced to close down or let people off. So yeah, my love.
Thank you so much. This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.